This video is going to be about prepping your brass specifically for rifle reloading. What I'm going to do here, I just have 10 range pickup 223 cases. You can see they're mixed head stamps. They still have the primer in it. So the first thing I do when reloading rifle is just clean the brass, because you don't want to run these through your sizing die dirty. They don't have to be sparkling clean like from a wet tumbler or from a dry tumbler. They just need to get the grit and grime off of them. That way you don't scratch your dies up. So all I'm going to do for this first step is throw these in a tub of water, warm water, with a little bit of Dawn dish soap, and stir it around and just get the grime and grit off of it. So I'll be right back when I'm ready for that. So what I did was just throw them in an old coffee container with a little bit of soap and water. I'm just mixing them around just to get the crap off of them. And you can see I'm only doing 10 just for this video. Obviously you probably do a much bigger batch than this. So I'm going to get these cleaned off and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got the brass somewhat clean. And like I said, this is just to get the grime off of it. We will actually wet tumble these later after everything's prepped. So what I do now, you can still see they're pretty wet. I'm just going to dump them on this towel and just kind of blot dry them. And a little trick I do is wrap them in the towel and just kind of shake them back and forth. That helps get the water out. Now, since there's primers still in there, they will still be a little wet, but that's all right. They're dry enough. They're not perfectly clean, but they are clean enough now for me to run them through my resizing die. You can see the primers are still in. If I can get it to focus. Primers are still in. So next step, what we're going to do is lube them. What I like to do is get a plastic bag and just throw the cases inside. And I use Hornady one-shot lube. It's worked for me. I know there's a lot of recipes online for lanolin and alcohol. I'll probably switch to that sometime when this is out, but this has always worked for me. The reason you have to lube, if you don't know, is rifle cases will get stuck in the dies if they are not lubed. I've had a few of them stuck. It's not fun. I'll probably do a video on that and show you guys how I remove the stuck dies. But all I'm doing here is just rubbing the lube around a little bit. I've only got 10 cases in here, so I'm not worried about it too much. That should be plenty. I like doing it in a Ziploc bag like this. That way it kind of contains it in there and I don't make a mess everywhere. According to Hornady, who makes this lube, this will not affect the primer or the powder charge, but we're going to wet tumble this anyways, just to be on the safe side. So what you want to do is let these sit for a few minutes. So the aerosol will flash off and we'll be left with the lube on the case, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we have our brass clean enough to run through the reloading dies now. And what we're going to do is run them through this Lee single stage press here. I have a Lee 223 full length resizer die on here. I like to do this on the single stage first, because if I'm going to have a hang up of some sort, I'd rather it happen on the single stage instead of while I'm reloading on a progressive. So what I'm going to do is just run these 10 cases that are lubed through here. You can see the primers popping out as we do this. Okay, so now we have 10 full-length resized and deprimed brass cases. So the next step, what we're going to do is remove the crimp. A lot of military brass will have a crimp in it, and if you try to put a new primer in there, you're gonna have a bad time. So I run all of these through my Dylan Super Swage just because it's just easier for me to do them all. I've probably done them before, but just doing them again, that way I know 100% that everyone has the primer crimp removed. So we're gonna move over to the Super Swage 600 next, and I'll show you that step. All right, now we're over at the Super Swage station. What this does is it actually swages the primer crimp. So instead of removing brass, it kind of just pushes it back into the case. And I found that this Dylan machine works very well. There are case prep centers. You can do it manually. I've even used a #2 Phillips head bit before, but I've got this tool. It's not cheap. It's like $100, but it does a great job. And this rod right here is specifically for 223. I've actually done some 300 blackout on this as well. So all you do is while the ram is up, you put it in, you flip it down, pull the handle, and that will remove it. Now, that didn't have very much pressure on it at all, so that tells me that this probably didn't have a crimp on it. But like I said, I do this process for all of them just to make sure. You know, if you're catching your brass from the range after shooting and you know that they've been decrimped, you can skip this step. But like I said, once you start going on a progressive, you really don't want to have any hang-ups on there, because it's so much easier when everything's just running smooth. And you can see this doesn't take much time at all. So I'm just gonna run through the 10 of them here. And just like that, we're done. So it's as easy as that. Next, what we're gonna do is check the overall length. And if it's over a specified length, we are going to trim it down. This is 223. The maximum case length is 1.760 inches. So I've got a couple ways of trimming this. I'll show you both methods, but I usually trim to 1.750 on 223 brass. So I'll be right back. All right, so we're gonna measure this brass and see if it needs trimmed. And I honestly don't know. I just grabbed this out of my range bucket, so they may not need trimmed, but we'll find out. So I've got this Hornady analog caliper here. So what I'm gonna do is check the overall length. And you can see that is 1.760, which is the maximum length. So I'm gonna throw it over here. This bin is the bin that needs trimmed. So we're just gonna go through, and that was actually under 1.750, so that was good to go. Almost 1.77, so that's definitely long. .753, that's good enough. 1.756, we'll trim that. 1.754, that'll work. So what I'm doing here, this is just going to be plinking ammo. This is not precision, but my rule for this is if it's over 1.755, I'll go ahead and trim it. It doesn't take long, and you know, the next time I fire it, I'm probably gonna have to trim it anyway, so might as well do it now. You can see this one's really long, 1.764, so we'll trim that one. Yeah, trim. That one's okay. And that one's good. So, we ended up with half and half. So 5 need trimmed, and 5 were acceptable. So what I have here, I've got 2 different methods of trimming. This is a very inexpensive, cheap way of trimming. It is the Lee case trimmer. It's specific for a caliper. So what you do is you get the lock ring here. This is the shell holder. This is specifically for 223. So this is shell holder number 4. And all you do is you chuck it into a drill. And each caliber that you get this for will come with this rod here, and it's specifically made to bottom out and cut at a precise length. And it's very important that you have the primer removed, otherwise this will not give you the results that it's intended to give you. Since we've already deprimed all of these, it's not a problem. So I'll demonstrate. Let's see, I've got another method of showing you to cut. So I'll do 2 with the Lee, and then we'll move on to the other ones.